The 2025 Crunchyroll Anime Awards are interesting, to say the least. Of course, there's some controversial nominations, there's some easy nominations, but as an anime YouTuber myself, I figured I'd take the opportunity to vote for some of these awards. At the end of the day, it is kind of Mickey Mouse because it's the Crunchyroll Anime Awards, but if you do disagree with any of my nominations, let me know. I'm curious what the populace voted for this year. And if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe. Starting off at the bottom, we have Best Voice Artist Performance in English. Now, if you follow this channel, you might know I am a sub-elitist. I do not like any anime in dub, to be honest, except for maybe Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is the only show I like the dub more than the sub, but I do try and keep up with the dub industry just to kind of remain tapped in, and I think this one absolutely has to go to Alex Lee as Sung Jin-woo. In one of the most main character-centric shows in the last, 5 years, he absolutely brings that energy to the show, and he does a fantastic job with all, the grunts and fighting noises. I think that's probably his biggest strength as a voice artist here. I'm not as familiar with all the other performances in these nominations, but I do think that if they were as good as his performance, I probably would have heard of him, so we're going Alex Lee for this one. Next up, we have Best Voice Artist Performance in Japanese. Now, while I think the quality of both Frieren and Apothecary Diaries have very high bars and all of the voice acting performances in them was very good, I think the greatest thing about Dandadan is how brought to life the characters are, and a lot of that falls on the voice acting, and I think it is just absolutely phenomenal. Between Natsuki Hane as Okarun and Shion Wakayama as Momo, I'm gonna have to give it to Momo in Shion Wakayama. I'm not sure what type of person Shion Wakayama is, or if she's like a gyaru in real life, just like Momo is in the show, but she brings out the vernacular of like a gyaru in almost 100% accurate fashion in this show. It really brings Momo's character to life throughout the entirety of the show. She's probably my favorite character, although I'm not done with season 1 yet. I'm about 10 episodes in. I think I'm definitely going Shion Wakayama here for the best voice artist performance in Japanese. For Best Ending Sequence, I was a little disappointed at the nominees. I think there were some underground picks that could have been included rather than some of the ones here, but I also think there's been a general ending drought, maybe ever since Fire Force set the bar so high in 2018. But I do think Oshinoko and Burning and Request for Solo Leveling are probably the two nominees here that I'm going to be taking a look at. I do think Request had better visuals, and a lot of people might value visuals in an ending a little more than the song when it comes to voting, but for me personally, Burning was a song that made it onto my personal playlist, which I don't really have that many anime songs in my playlist anymore, so I'm gonna have to give this one to Burning just because the song was so good. The visuals were also good. I think it falls a little bit short of Solo Leveling, but the song just hard carries here. On the complete other side of the coin for endings, Best Opening Sequence is stacked this year with a lot of really good picks. And if you ask me, this comes down to whether you prefer a song being good in an opening or the visuals and the direction being good in an opening. Creepy Nuts absolutely took over this year. Bling Bang Bang Born and Ozonoke were both their songs. They were both mega viral, not even because of the shows, but just because of the song. They made top charts in Japan for literally months straight. I feel like if you listen to Japanese music, you know Creepy Nuts and you know those songs absolutely. But then, as far as the direction and visual side goes, both Fatal and Us were absolute masterpieces, especially Us with One Piece, which was directed by Megumi Ishitani, which if you recognize that name, you know it's going to be the most stellar looking thing you've ever seen in your entire life. So, if you ask me, for an opening, I prefer a great mix of song and visual. So because the Creepy Nuts songs nominated here are both a little bit heavy on the song side and not the visuals, and One Piece's Us, although it looks absolutely incredible, is not a great song, I'm actually going to pick the underdog that fits kind of both categories here in Fatal from Oshinoko. I think it's a fantastic song. I love Tatsuya Kitani, and also the visuals were really good. I feel like this is just the middle of the pack pick here that kind of hits the best of both worlds, so I'm voting for Fatal. Best score is going to be a controversial one, and let me explain why. I know Look Back was like an incredible, critically acclaimed movie, but I don't think it's the soundtrack that makes it all that. I know Hiroyuki Sawano is like one of the greatest composers of all time with Solo Leveling, but I'm gonna go with my old school Sword Art Online GOAT, Yuki Kajiura and Demon Slayer. I do think people watch Demon Slayer for things that aren't emotional value. People watch Demon Slayer for the cool fights and the animation, but I actually think Yuki Kajiura and also Go Shino, who's like the side composer for this show, do a fantastic job bringing out the emotion in a show that doesn't really have the greatest characters or the greatest emotional moments, and it really has elevated Demon Slayer into like my top 10 anime, although the plot really doesn't have all of that, so I'm gonna go with Demon Slayer Season 4 here. Now we have Best Anime Song, which I would imagine is similar to Best Anime Opening and Ending, but just talking about the song. I wish they would sort of combine this category with the other categories and not separate them, but regardless. Although I like Fatal the best here, and it was on my personal playlist, just like the ending actually, I think the cultural impact of Blink Bang Bang Born cannot be ignored. I heard that song maybe once or twice a day on any social media platform for literally like 4 months straight. The amount of covers I saw of it, the amount of meme spins I saw on it, just the simple impact of this song makes me unable to not vote for it. Creepy Nuts took over 2024 and 2025 as well, so I'm voting Blink Bang Bang Born. Must protect at all cost character. I hate this category. I'm not voting for it. Best supporting character, though, is something that I can get behind. And I think where a lot of people thought the Crunchyroll Anime Awards this year were sort of dry on nominations, this category actually shines pretty high. A lot of the side characters in all of these shows are actually pretty funny and do a really good job of supporting the main character, but I am going to let my bias shine through a little bit here. Mayumi Tanaka brings Turbo Baba to life like crazy. Turbo Granny is one of my favorite characters in Dandadan. The cat body is so hilarious, and it actually has pretty significant plot relevance, and it's not just like some kind of gag. It's actually a real supporting character, so I'm voting for Turbo Granny. Best main character is a little less contested. I mean, if you're voting for anyone other than my glorious aura farming king, Sun Jinwoo, I just feel like you're not watching anime. I do feel like Solo Leveling's a little bit of hamburger, taco, hot dog. You know, it's a little not that deep, but I mean, Solo Leveling is just iconic. Sung Jin-woo is iconic, both in the manga and the anime. I'm voting for him. Best drama, I've only seen 3 of these, but I do think there's a clear winner in my opinion. I know Frieren and Apothecary Diaries were both very critically acclaimed, and people love those shows. I like them too. I just think Oshinoko, I mean, maybe this is my bias because I'm very interested in the Japanese idol industry and things like that. I do think the characters in that show really intertwine with the plot better than the other two. I know a lot of people like those other two, like I just said. I really thought they were a little bit overrated. Maybe that's just because they're not too far into their story yet, but I think Oshinoko brings a sense of suspense and drama and a really heavy weight on the audience that these other two shows didn't really give for me, so I'm voting for Oshinoko for best drama. Best isekai anime is kind of tearing me apart here. I really don't know what to go, and I think that's because I have a different relationship with a lot of these anime. Slime Season 3 kind of fell off in my opinion. It had been a good 2 years since I had watched Season 1 and 2, so maybe my interest just fell off. ReZero Season 3, I'm only a few episodes into, but I love Season 1 and 2, and Season 3 kind of just builds off of what I loved a lot so far. But then you have Mushoku Tensei. I am a huge fan of the Mushoku Tensei light novels, and although this season of Mushoku Tensei was the weakest part of the light novel by far, and I think Seasons 3 and 4 will be way better, I do think they elevated the material enough to where I actually really enjoyed it, where when I was reading the light novel it was a complete slog. It was a very pleasant surprise to see. The other 3 I just have not seen. I've seen the first 2 seasons of Konosuba, but just based on that, I know it's not enough to compete with the other 3. But I think I am going to go ReZero, just because the content adapted in Mushoku Tensei this season wasn't as good, and I think ReZero had a lot of groundbreaking animation scenes, a lot of groundbreaking emotional scenes. I've seen a lot more of it on my Twitter timeline. I think it's making a bigger cultural impact, so we'll go ReZero. Okay, now before people jump on me for my best action take, I have not seen any of Bleach. I know pretty much nothing about Bleach. I'll be watching it soon because I need to watch all of the big 3, but I feel like there's a clear winner here. It would have been Demon Slayer, but this season was dragged out in a lot of training. There wasn't a lot of action. That last episode was absolutely incredible, but we're not rating it based off of one episode. Solo Leveling all the way through has been incredible action. I know, like I said before, it's a little bit repetitive. It's a little bit dry as far as the depth goes, but it's action, and its action is really, really good and entertaining. The animation's great. The fights are unique. The characters' powers are cool. I think you just have to vote Solo Leveling for best action here. For best comedy, maybe this isn't the best way to vote, but I'm going based off of the clips I've seen from all 6 of these shows, so we're gonna speedrun this. Delicious in Dungeon was like fine. Konosuba is band kid humor. Mashle was good for a little bit, but got really repetitive, just repeating the same thing every episode. I don't even know what Ranma is. Spy Family is the driest shit I've ever read or watched in my entire life. But Noko-tan was damn funny. There were some funny clips from that, especially the intro, so that's what I'm voting for. Best background art is something I would have easily given to Demon Slayer if it was seasons 1, 2, or 3, but this season felt really dry, as if they were preparing for the movie trilogy coming out soon. So this one for me is in between Frieren and Dandadan, and I actually am going to give it to Frieren here. I think the very vibrant colors of the show really bring out the environment. It's kind of the only thing I saw really shared about the show other than the characters and the plot. A lot of times you hear like, oh, this show's animation's incredible, oh, this show's music is incredible. The biggest thing I saw about Frieren was kind of the vibe and the environment, so I'm gonna go with Frieren. There are certain nominations in the Crunchyroll Awards that you will see me absolutely shill for one nomination over the rest by a mile, and it's not even close. And if you don't vote for the one that I'm voting for here, I will vehemently disagree with you. That's one of these categories right here. Best Director. Megumi Ishitani is one of the most creative people on the planet. Her creative vision and direction of art in general is one of the most blessed things I've had the chance to experience in my life. I know this sounds like supreme tier glaze, but I promise you if you watch any of her works, you will absolutely agree with me, even if you have no specific ties to the IP she's working with. As you can see, I'm a huge One Piece fan. One Piece fan letter is one of the greatest things I've watched in my entire life. Her direction is just absolutely superb. If you're not voting for Megumi Ishitani in this award, you're doing it wrong, man. You're just doing it wrong. Best Character Design is a nomination I kind of have a gripe with every year because character design to me is something that stems from the manga, not the anime, and it's the Crunchyroll Awards, which is the anime awards, so it doesn't really make sense. By going by that logic, I'm gonna go with Kaiju 8 here. I think it deserves its flowers in at least one category, and I think the characters actually look really cool all across the board with their different weapons influencing their kind of style. And yeah, I just wanted to give it one award here at least because it is a good show and a great manga, so we'll go Kaiju 8. Now, let me tell you something about Best Animation. It is absolutely unfathomable that One Piece is not in this category. I don't want to talk about it too much, but what One Piece has brought to the table in the last 2-3 calendar years even is absolutely incredible, and for it not to get animated for Best Animation doesn't make sense at all unless there's some kind of rule where because it's an ongoing show it doesn't count for this nomination. But although this category is a little bit dry compared to previous years, some of the cuts and sequences in Frieren are very incredible, so I'm gonna go with Frieren. That being said, like I said before, it is disappointing that One Piece is not nominated here. For Best New Series, it's pretty much the same 6 shows we've been seeing repeated throughout all the nominations, but I think there's one that's doing something very incredible, and it might not come as a surprise to you. But I'm voting for Solo Leveling based off of how it's adapting the manhwa. I feel like with a manhwa, because there's colors and a lot of unique paneling style, it's very hard to adapt into something that's accurate to the source material, and it has done a fantastic job doing so. Not only that, there's another level of friction here because the manhwa isn't even the source material, it's the light novel that came out first. So to go from light novel to manhwa to anime and still maintain that level of consistency and accurate adaptation is very impressive. And also, it's just making waves across all of anime. There are people I've seen on Twitter who know nothing about anime who are catching these Solo Leveling waves, so I'm going with Solo Leveling here. Best Continuing Series. Do you know what channel you're watching right now? This is going to One Piece. Come on, let's be real. I do want to give my flowers to My Hero, though. Although it fell off a little bit in terms of production, I think My Hero is severely underrated still, despite how popular it is, but we're going One Piece, so. Film of the Year, we have another controversy for my opinions. First, I want to mention My Hero. Although all of the My Hero movies have these strangest plots that have nothing to do with the main story and are all very weird, the animation and production is always absolutely incredible. So I think, you know, I'm not voting for it, but it deserves me at least saying that the production for those movies is incredible. Now we come to Look Back versus Haikyuu, and this is really a question of my bias versus objectivity. Look Back was incredibly, critically acclaimed. People, even outside of the anime industry, said it was one of the best movies they've watched in their life. It made incredible emotional impacts in any sphere I really saw. But Haikyuu is the greatest media I've consumed ever. The manga and the anime combined, I'm talking about. The emotional beats in the movie are absolutely incredible. The production is absolutely incredible. The plot is absolutely incredible. Although it did cut out certain parts of the manga, looking at it as a standalone product, I feel like it is still a 10 out of 10 movie. And I'm sorry, Look Back, I'm going to let my bias shine through here. Anything Haikyuu, just, it gets my vote, man. I love this movie. Although I am disappointed with their choice to make it a movie instead of a season, I have watched this movie, I think, 13 or 14 times now, and every single time I find myself with tears in my eyes. Like, it's just fantastic. And the very last award, Anime of the Year, I want to say for Delicious in Dungeon, Apothecary Diaries, and Kaiju 8, all very good anime. Some of them not as good as I thought they were going to be when I watched them based off the hype they were generating, but the other 3 are just leagues ahead of them, so we're going to focus on that. Frieren made incredible waves, very unique story with incredible animation. I could say the same thing for Dandadan, but specifically more with the characters. I feel like the characters in Dandadan were really popular and it made a lot of cultural impact as far as how people view characters in anime. But the run that Solo Leveling has been on, both in the anime world as well as just media and television in general, I have not seen so much hype generated since like Demon Slayer first came out. When I saw famous streamers I watched talking about Demon Slayer and I didn't even know they were anime fans, Solo Leveling is having that effect, and I haven't seen it since like 2017. So I think it is Solo Leveling's year. We should cap off its generational 2 season 1 with an Anime of the Year win at the Crunchyroll Awards, so I'm voting for Solo Leveling. Those are my votes for the 2025 Crunchyroll Anime Awards. Of course, there's a 0% chance everyone agrees with me 100%, but let me know what you disagree with me on. I'm really curious what other people voted for, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.